Meeting to order of 12:14 on March 5, and so we need to do the roll call.
Board Member Dinklage?
Yes.
Board Member Catlin is absent. Board Member Doyle?
Yes.
Board Member Howe?
Here.
Board Member Larkin?
Present.
Board Member Lonick?
Here.
Board Member McClure? Here. Board Member Springer?
Here.
And Chair Reagan.
Here. Moving on to approval of the agenda. Need a motion for that.
Don't make the motion.
Okay, Mike Springer, is your second?
Second.
Dean Lonick, is there discussion or changes to the agenda? If none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? And approval of the minutes from the previous two meetings, February 12 and February 18. I think the work session was not a formal meeting, but I don't know if we need to approve that at all or not.
You do.
Okay. So we need a motion for that.
Want both?
Yep.
I'll make the motion.
Okay, Mike Springer, is there a second?
Second.
April, and is there any discussion or corrections from the minutes? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Treasurer's report, Sue?
The current balance is $357,364. We will be taking in approximately $95,000 more additional TIFA revenue in IFT funds. And I wanted to mention too, the two invoices, there's one to Rickard and one to Lights Plus. Lights Plus was for the replacement bulbs downtown, and Rickard was for repairs to the Veterans Park lights.
How much do we get from the taxes from, they're still outstanding from KSD, which you mentioned earlier?
The industrial facilities, approximately $100,000 more will be getting into the
Okay. And what do you call that? What's that? That industrial?
industrial facilities tax.
Okay. Okay, any other questions for Sue? Need a motion to approve the treasurer's report?
So,
Okay. Is there a second?
second.
Mike Larkin. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Item 5, public comments for items not on the agenda. If none, we'll move on to item 6, draft development plan. That
The email that you received, you spent some time at the workshop going through the priority setting exercise. What was emailed to you was a draft of a development plan. That draft has a little bit of language in it that talks about creating a development plan, how it fits in with the overall strategic plan of the city. And then a page that talks about those projects that are currently in progress. Remember, we took some of those and put them off to the side. And then a page devoted to Tier 1 projects and then Tier 1 planning goals. And then a page devoted to Tier 2 projects and Tier 2 planning goals. And then the worksheet that we were using, that's been resorted with headings at the top so you can see how the text for the plan actually came out of the worksheet, the various scores that were there. And what I've envisioned is that maybe take some time, look at this draft development plan, if you've got any corrections or any additional language or anything else that you feel that it needs to address, then maybe get that back to you in the next month or so. And then I would have a draft available for you at the next meeting that perhaps that you would adopt. At some point in time, we'll be moving toward adoption. Probably what I'll add at the beginning, aside from what's here, will just be some background information about creation of DDAs and maybe some history on things that the DDA has already done, statutory references, those kinds of things. But what you have before you right now is really sort of the meat of it, which is the plan moving forward. And then the other thing that would be a part of it is a long-term financial schedule where we take estimates of the tier 1, tier 2 projects that have been identified and plug those into a schedule so that you could see what the dollars would look like over the next 10 to 20 years. And then that'll help you, I think, as we move forward and start to make some decisions about what may be funded and what may not be, and whether or not you borrow or don't borrow and all that. I think I heard, I'm just going to throw a statement out there, and you can agree with it or not, and we'll get an idea of where the board feels. But during the workshop, I had mentioned something about, we could just do a 20-year, $1 million bond and do a bunch of projects right now. And I think there were a lot of shaking heads no, and I don't think that that's the direction that the DDA wants to head in. At least that's what I gathered from that if we did do any borrowing or any bonding, it might be short-term, 5 years, 10 years for a very specific project. Otherwise, most of it we would maybe want to do pay as you go. So that's the sense I'm getting, but tell me if I'm wrong on that, because as I lay out this capital plan, I would need to know the direction.
I think the history of the DDA, we are very conservative, I think, and when we do projects, and fortunately or unfortunately, I think it was nice to do this plan to look into the future of some of the projects that we have had. I think in the past few years, we've kind of dealt with projects as needed, So this is more of a long-term goal, and a plan. I don't think it really boxes us in to, that we have to do these projects. If something else priority-wise comes up that as a board we think is prudent, or the city council would like to have us, I think that gives us the flexibility to change our priorities. I assume, because nothing's written in granite, is I guess what I'm saying. So as long as the board, understands that, this is kind of a flexible plastic type of a plan, and, got most of our input. I wasn't at all of the meetings, and I don't think all of the board was at all of the meetings, but I think it was a good general input from, a cross-section of people that, have businesses down here, maybe not on the DDA, but I think it was good input from everybody all around.
Yeah, it was.
So, as long as this, that's what I understand, just looking at it, it gives us like a plan.
Yeah. And I can reiterate that a little bit, and maybe just to sort of solidify it. A plan is a plan, and it gives you, as things come before you, if they're not a part of the plan, that doesn't necessarily mean that the DDA wouldn't see those as a priority. But the plan gives you something to weigh that against, because quite often, I like to tell boards and commissions, you're rarely approached with a bad idea. It's just a matter of trying to figure out whether or not that idea that's in front of you at the moment is a higher priority than the other ideas that might be out there. And what the plan does is it gives you at least a reference point for that, so that if other things come before you, then you know what to evaluate them against. And it's something that we look at every year, would update every year as well. And so as new members come on board or as new ideas come around, this is a working document and it can be updated every year.
Good. So we don't need any motion or anything on that because we're not adopting. And I'm going to encourage the board to take this home and review it. And if you see some things that need to be tweaked, that's when we need to address. Bring it to Mark's attention.
Yep. Send me comments and we'll go from there.
Moving on to the South Monroe parking, and I don't know, Mark, if you want to address that update, and there's Jeff is here to maybe give us an update too.
I can start with it maybe and then hand it off to Jeff. He has some comments. I know the property owners are having some discussion about the property transfer that would need to occur. In the meantime, we've talked internally from a staff perspective, and utilities behind the building will need to be moved, and we've got a water line that needs to be upgraded, and we've got to do something with the sewer line. And the question for us is whether or not we're going to, there's going to be a 20-foot, I'll call it buffer for lack of a better term, but a sort of a 20-foot buffer behind the buildings. And then what does that do in terms of the utilities? And the discussion we're having with the engineers is going to be, can we just move forward with design? Because we know we're going to do the water project. At the very least, we're doing a water project. So can we move forward with that design? And is it fairly simple if we have to move those in one direction or another? Is that a fairly simple change that could occur? And I think the answer has been, yeah, it is a fairly simple change that could occur. So we're going to start moving forward on designing at least the water project. So that's the update that I have.
Good. Do you have anything that you wanted to add?
You want me to go up to the mic?
Sure. Yeah.
So we go ahead and spin that around.
Greg Canfield and I have been in discussion about the exchange of the two properties. From the start, I told Greg that in order to make the deal, I would need either a copy of transfer of deed from the railroad company or some proof that there is no easement that crosses that parcel 10 property on Kent and South Monroe. He has not been able to supply either right now. He supplied me with a document from Mid-State Title that said there's no liens or anything against that property, but in the title it did mention two exceptions. One exception was some LIBOR number, a real old LIBOR number, which my attorney is looking into. And the other one exception is that there may be a railroad possibility, the possibility of some railroad conflicting with that property. So my attorney is looking into both of those issues right now, and he's contacting the state title company. And again, to make the deal with the two properties, I need assurance that the railroad is not going to come back on me if I build a building over there.
Sure.
So that's where it stands. If the title company will insure over those two exceptions, then we can make a deal.
Good.
That's where it stands. Should know later this week or next week, shortly, the answer from the title company.
Thanks, Jeff.
Yep.
And I just remember vaguely when we were working on that Superior Furniture parking lot, it was a long time getting that spur, working with the railroads. It just seemed like it took forever, so, just have patience with that, Jeff. And
Well, I purchased the railroad property that was on my old property years ago in 2000, and it wasn't that much of a deal to do that. I mean, it took me maybe a year, a few $1,000s, but it wasn't that big a deal.
Good.
But that's what I told Greg to start with.
Sure.
He hasn't been able to do it.
Anything we can do to
Make it quicker, easier.
I don't know what.
How about the railroad? They have their own pace.
They do. You get in line for everyone nationwide. If you're trying to buy a little spur, or you're trying to buy acres, you're still in the same line.
No, my attorney did say that a lot of the railroad, like the Ione County and all that spur, all that railroad was deeded to the trail systems. But there's no record of any of that coming into Lowell that was ever deeded. So, or what was included in that transfer.
Okay. No motion that we need to take on that at all, I assume, Mark, so we'll move on to new business and Maureen Mulligan. Presentation on the summer concerts.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for your many, many years of support for the summer concerts. Just a refresher, our first summer concerts were in 2001. So it's been quite a few years that we've been putting it on, and you've been supporting it from the beginning, so we really appreciate it. Some things new to share. We did do a film last summer at the very end of the concert. It was the Friday after the last Thursday concert, and it was quite successful. We did it behind the library, between that lawn space between the library and Unity High School. And I'm guessing we had about 300 people, would you say? About 300 people came, so the first time we really felt that was successful. We did a popular vote to choose the film that we showed, and we're going to do that again, getting popular votes at the concerts and then through the library. And depending on how our funding comes in from our sponsors, We hope to do two films this summer, one possibly at the beginning of the concert series and the one at the end. We did do a film during Harvest Celebration last year at the Foreman Building, and that wasn't as successful, so we're not going to repeat that. The other change this year is we're really tying in our Thursday concert before the Dune Grass Festival at the end of June, where we're bringing in quite a headliner on that Thursday. We're bringing Stepan Ennett, and if people have been following The Voice, Joshua Davis is part of Stepan Ennett, and he's a finalist on The Voice, and he will be at that concert. So we're really looking at that as a way of really promoting the Dune Grass Festival at the end of June, because they've been really kind of suffering a little bit as far as attendance. So we're going to be marketing that festival as being a 3-day festival versus just a 2-day. So those are the changes this summer. So does anybody have any questions about it?
No, just other than your report does, point out some of the other fundings that you do get for that. So I appreciate the other community people that do sponsor that, the corporate sponsors and the entertainment sponsors. So it's nice that we don't, split the bill. We put on a better program too. So appreciate that.
Huntington came through this year as our entertainment sponsor. So Huntington Bank is our entertainment sponsor this year.
Okay, any questions for Lorraine or Liz? You're asking for $6,000. Okay, and is there a motion to that effect?
I'll make the motion.
Mike Springer, is there a second?
Second.
And any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Good luck and
Thank you very much.
guaranteed good weather.
Yes. The snow will go away. Thank you.
Okay, new business, Avery Street project. Any update on Avery Street?
Yeah. First, I'm handing out a budget report for the DDA, so I can give you maybe a little bit of a compass and kind of show you where you're at right now in terms of finances. The columns across the top are the last 2 years of activity, and then the budget that you actually adopted, and then the activity through February of this year. You can see that we had, I'm looking at TIFA revenue or revenue as a whole, and we've already collected about $400,000 in revenue, and I think Sue you were projecting maybe another 100,000 or so in
about
IFTs.
494 total.
About 494 will be our total, so we'll be over in terms of what we budgeted on the revenue side of things. The next item down is the first expense item is capital, and you see we budgeted 120,000 for capital. That typically tends to be projects that you take on. Maintenance is that's just the work that's done in the downtown area, mostly salaries and for the guys that do the work, and then whatever operating supplies that they have, and then administration is accounting primarily, and then that professional and contractual. The reason that that's so high this budget year is because that's $30,000 for the downtown plan. So in the next budget, you'll see that go back down unless you want to set aside money for any other planning activities. And then community promotions, operating, that's, for example, summer concert that you just approved, Christmas, marketing, banners, we talked about banners in there, so that's where that stuff comes from. And then debt service, as you can see, we paid off the long-term debt that we had, and so we have no debt service payments. And then if you go to the other side, the transfer out, that's the 50% of the city hall bond payment that you typically agreed to contributing to. And then if you look at the very bottom, then you'll see estimated revenues, appropriation, and then net. But beginning and ending fund balance is the key, and that is after everything is said and done, and I'm looking at the budget column now. If you spend everything that's in the budget, you'll end with a $240,000 fund balance. Now, we just heard that that may be a little bit more by about $40,000. But you're going to be in the $250,000 range at the end of the year, if everything goes as planned in terms of budget. Going back up then to capital, you had budgeted $120,000 for capital, and we don't anticipate anything occurring right away on the South Monroe project. And I think when we get to the South Monroe project, it's the price tag. And this is purely a guess because I have no cost estimates, but not including utilities, just the parking lot itself may be in the $250,000 range. And again, that is a pure guess without a lot of discussion with the engineer. In the meantime, this year, we are focused on a downtown street project, and that downtown street project would be Avery Street from Monroe to Jackson, and then all of the short blocks or the single blocks of Monroe, Washington, Jefferson, and Jackson between Avery and Main Street. So it would be this entire section of the downtown area. Our plan is to work very closely with MDOT, because MDOT is going to be doing an M21 project this year. And we're going to work very closely with them in terms not only of schedules, but I'd kind of like to bid our Avery Street project after the MDOT bid, and then try to coordinate our schedule with their schedule so that whoever is the winning bidder on the MDOT project and the big project, maybe we'll see some reduced expense there in terms of mobilization and things like that. They can coordinate that schedule with us and with that M21 project. I'm not certain when the M21 project is going to occur. We'll certainly get that word out to folks as soon as we know. What I've heard so far is that they want to do bid letting in June, so my guess is it's going to be an August, September project. We're going to encourage them to avoid, there's also something going on Hudson Street. We're going to encourage them to try to do this maybe after the concert series and after all the activities that are going on downtown. On the other hand, maybe we'll just do it right in the middle of the Riverwalk Festival.
Really fun.
It'd make for an interesting parade downtown. So there's a lot of coordinating that needs to go on there, but what I'm requesting from you is, I've passed out the memo from the engineers and on the Avery Street project, and one of the things that we're looking at, if you look at the page, it's easier to talk about it all, just on page 5. And that's where the dollars are. We looked at 2 different options, and we're going to, as we look at all city streets, we're going to look at 2 different options for the most part. One would be edge milling, where you just mill the edge of the street along the curbs, and you leave the middle, or maybe spot mill the middle of the street, and then you do an overlay over the top of that. And for a number of local city streets, we think that we can get pretty far by doing that kind of a process, that we don't have to go get all the way through the asphalt, we don't have to replace the base. We're sitting, the town is basically sitting on gravel anyway, and so we think that the bases are pretty solid. But with that process, a lot of it depends on what the condition of the current asphalt is. And if it's, for example, like Monroe right outside of City Hall, if it's really beat up, there's a lot of potholes, and those potholes are all the way across the street, then edge milling doesn't really make sense, because you still, with that sort of pothole asphalt as a base on top of the gravel that you have underneath it, it's just not going to hold up, and a couple of inches of asphalt is just not going to hold up. So those are areas where we would look at a full pavement removal and resurface, and that's where the cost goes up a little bit, but the life expectancy of the street goes up as well. Those are going to be areas where we have higher volumes of traffic, and where we have heavier traffic as well, where we have truck traffic. And in this particular section of street, not only Avery, but especially the various side streets, we have a lot of truck traffic, and we have a lot of vehicular traffic as well. So we're planning on going with full pavement removal. That's going to be a total cost of $328,000. We have about 2/3 of that identified already within the Major Street Fund, and the City Council has also approved the use of LCTV funds this year for street projects, and so LCTV would be used for the street project. We still need to identify another 1/3 of the cost of that, and that's what I'm coming to you for today, is to ask for a 1/3, not 2. I would say a 1/3 of the project cost, not to exceed $110,000. What's built into that price is some contingencies in case some base needs to be replaced. There's engineering expense and that kind of stuff. And I always, I'm usually pretty hard on engineers to try to keep their time down, and their efforts down, and their costs down. But we're pretty confident that 328 is a worst case scenario. And we'll keep the cost down, and then we'll ask for a 1/3 of whatever the final amount is.
And that's in the DDA district, correct? Because that covers the front and the back side of the blocks.
The only question I have about the DDA district, and I'm sorry I wasn't able to identify that before I came up, but I don't know if the line runs through Jackson and then that section of Avery from Jackson to Jefferson. I don't know if the line is in the middle of the street or if it excludes those 2 sections, but the rest of it is. The rest of it clearly is.
Well, it's definitely infrastructure, and the roads have really taken a beating the last couple of years. So I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but you got the money that we spend in the Sizzle and Concert series back to this type of an infrastructure thing. So I personally think it's especially being close to Main Street and the businesses, I think it's a good use of our funds. So I don't have a problem with it. I don't know how the rest of the board feels.
It would be our total capital.
It basically, yes.
We
Yeah.
didn't have anything left. We delayed the parking lot for another year or 2.
It would be the total capital through June of this year, and then July you start a new budget, and so you would have new capital dollars available in July of this year. I don't see, the only possibility I see on the parking lot would be we could remove the building that's over there and maybe start to get some base down or something down to be able to allow for additional parking there. It's going to be a tight schedule to get utilities moved and get asphalt down this year. I wanted to do it last year. I'm trying to be realistic about that.
Then you said something about Hudson Street. Are we going to be looking at something over there too?
No, the DDA would not. The county is planning a project between, I think it's April to July, or maybe May to July, on the bridge over the Grand River. They're going to be resurfacing that bridge, and so traffic's going to be rerouted around that during that period of time.
It's down by July.
Yeah. Their completion date's July 1st, I think, right? July 2nd.
There'd be a problem with, I think our first priority that we've been working on is the South Monroe parking lot. But if this isn't going to transpire until the timing, June, July, or August, does that impact, the fund balance that we have we can use to allocate for that?
You could always use fund balance. I mean, even though you have 120,000 set aside in capital, and that's one of the reasons why I gave you sort of the compass. If you look at fund balance, you still would have 240,000 in fund balance, and so if you needed to allocate 50,000 or 100,000, or get started on something in terms of the parking lot, and you need to do it before the end of the fiscal year. All that means is you're going to be over budget, you're going to have expense over revenue, and that's just going to pull from fund balance or pull from your savings. But we anticipate even if you spend the full 120, that you're going to have fund balance of at least 240, and like Sue was saying, you know, we may receive more TIFA revenue than we expected, and so, you know, that could be more like 272 maybe.
The fund balance is basically cash.
It's basically cash. It's basically, I like to call it savings.
At one time, didn't you bring up the possibility of doing a bond on the parking lot and paying for it over a few years, or did I misunderstand?
No, I did bring that up, and I think that's a possibility, and that's a discussion we should have, and what your comfort level is with bonding. And I'll tell you, from my perspective, I'm not going to recommend that we do some kind of a long-term bond. The most might be 10 years, but anything beyond that, I wouldn't recommend a long-term bond and big projects. You know, like I said, the parking is going to be anywhere from, you know, somewhere around $250,000. I should quit throwing that out and maybe actually get the numbers. Let's say, even for the sake of discussion, it's $500,000. If you bond that out over a 5 or a 10-year period, you're talking about then tying up payments of, you know, $50,000 or so, which would then reduce the amount that you have available for capital. And I think that amount you're going to have available for capital is going to be in the $150,000 range. And where I get that from is $120,000 that we just budgeted, and then the $30,000 that we had for the downtown development plan. So I think you're going to have about $150,000 every year. Now, when we get to talking about budget next month, the other thing that I plan on laying out, I think I mentioned this as we were talking about the plan, is I plan on laying out the financial side of it as well, and plugging in projects and showing how future cash flow, we anticipate future cash flow to be in terms of capital projects, and how that fund balance might go up or down depending on how you allocate dollars for projects. So I plan on putting more of the numbers onto a spreadsheet for you over a longer period of time.
What is the railroad problem here about the project? Nothing?
The railroad issue is just that if there is an easement on you're talking about this property transfer?
Yeah.
Yes. If there's an easement on the portion that Jeff would acquire, his concern would be that he would like to put a building on that parcel of property, but if there's an easement there, that limits his options for where he can place a building.
Well, will that stop? Let's say they don't get that easement, is that going to stop the project?
I think it just I think it just makes it a different project, because we still have property back there. We have everything except for basically the old button factory. And so we can build parking around that, and we can build it in such a way that if we ever do acquire the button factory portion, then we can just extend the parking lot.
So that might not even be on this year's budget anyway, right? Because of that?
I mean, when we're talking about this year's budget between now and the end of June, I don't think so.
So it wouldn't even affect this, right?
But then going back to the point that was made is that if there was something that we wanted to do right away, you know, and start funding that project, you still have fund balance, and you could use a portion of fund balance.
Being the rookie on the board, generally are you uncomfortable financing things for 4 or 5 years or something? Is that something that you do on a regular basis, or?
Well, we have in the past. We just haven't had any major projects, you know, recently. You know, we did for the amphitheater, I think, and streetscape and street lights. But recently, no, we haven't done anything major. We've had to bond. We've kind of paid as you go almost. So,
Well,
so you know, and even a 5-year bond, that's easier for me to swallow than you know, multi-million-dollar projects.
Oh, sure.
You know, that we just hopefully we don't run into those anymore.
Yeah, and when we did that, I mean, we were in a period of high growth, and we were young, didn't have cash, and it conservatively was a low-risk investment, and I think that you know, history proves that, you know, we were right in what we did.
just paid it off.
Yeah.
No.
The other viewpoint I've heard is that it was a long period of time. We got a lot of projects done, but we're at the point now where we just paid the bond off, but then there's some repair to those projects that needs to occur, you know, like the bricks on the Riverwalk and things like that. And so you know, we just got to pay it off, and now we've got to turn around and fix it. And we didn't have money available earlier, so that's a viewpoint that I've heard that I thought I would share with you.
So bottom line, what is the city looking for the DDA for the total cost then? From
Not to exceed 110,000. 1/3 of the project cost, not to exceed 110.
Anybody want to make that motion or any further
I'll make
discussion?
that motion.
Okay, Mike, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Cliff, any further discussion? I kind of lean towards the long-term cost. I mean the 15-year useful life.
We're heading to get it.
Especially the traffic that comes off of Main Street. I think we, you know, I see it as, you know, part of the DDA purpose to kind of keep at least, you know, the blocks and the businesses, the streets in good shape. So, anybody else?
Do we feel good about that 15 years?
In terms of expected life?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll just reach up here and grab 15, or?
No, that's the engineering estimate. So, you know, that's based on their experience, and I don't know if they run models on that or not. But that's, the memo that you see is from the engineers. Those aren't my figures. Now, if you want to know my figure, I think it's going to last longer than 15 years. And that's just based on the streets that have been done in this town were done almost 40 years ago and haven't been repaired, and we have a very solid base underneath them. And if we can go back and do preventive maintenance on, like, we're gonna crack seal the street 3 years or so after it's done, and then we'll come back and crack seal it again in another 3 years. And so you do that preventive maintenance, you keep the water and ice from getting into the cracks, and then you end up getting more than that 15 years. So I think his 15 years is likely based on no preventive maintenance.
Well, Broadway and Riverside didn't last 15 years.
Oh,
You know,
was there preventative maintenance done? I don't know.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. It's a big part of it.
These streets were done the year I got my driver's license.
Well, so they're not
I'll
that
turn
old.
50.
So they're not that old. 40 years, so I was right on the 40 years.
Brian accelerated the
Yeah,
wear and tear. Okay, there is a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Yes, these aren't bid,
No, these are engineered estimates.
so you're not asking for a third of the final, you're just asking for 110.
I'm saying a third of the final, not to exceed 110, because if the project comes in less than that, then the DDA would only pay for whatever the third of the cost is.
So your maximum is 110.
My maximum is 110. If the bids come in higher than that, then I'll probably come crawling in and having a discussion with you about that. But no, I'm saying the maximum would be 110, but we would only bill for a third of what the total cost is.
How old is this estimate?
January 23rd of this year.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Thank you.
Okay. Reports and member comments. Cliff? Any comments? April?
No.
No. Dean?
Nope.
Brian or Mike?
We ever gonna see a parking study we did, paid for?
Yes. They sent a draft to me just this week and said, we need to get together and talk about this, and you need to look at the draft and, before we put together our recommendations. So, that's actually been delayed a little bit, mostly due to me and my schedule, and just trying to get some other things done. So, yes, you'll see that, and we'll get that back in front of her.
Okay, no comments from me at all, so need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Dean, is there a second? Brian, the only discussion is the next meeting will be after spring break, so like maybe April 9th, or Thursday. I don't know if anybody's going to be Timbuktu.
I won't be here. You can get the meeting without me. I won't be here.
That's still spring break.
So that during spring break?
Yeah, that is.
Okay, so you want to, can we move it to the 16th?
I don't think there's any, oh, that's Girls Night Out.
I'm pretty sure we can handle a meeting for Girls Night Out.
It might be a special meeting.
It's okay if we move that
That's
to
the
the
only thing I know
16th?
about that day.
Okay, so tentatively we'll shoot for the 16th instead of the 9th. Okay? Okay, all those in favor of adjourning signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Stay here.